Good morning. Hello, good morning. Good morning, everyone. We are live streamed via our YouTube channel. We're going to pick up this morning on chapter 2 of our Master Educator course. Um, the recording is in place for study purposes. Hold the line while I share. All right. So we're here at chapter 2, continue the teaching plan and learning environment. As we begin to close in on some of our major concepts of the teaching plan and managing the classroom, we're going to head over to slides that we um, lastly viewed. And let's just pick up at slide 9, general organization. Let me tell you, it is um, a blessing to be here on today and to really just have the opportunity to pour into future educators. Um, we get excited about the teaching component. We get excited about, sharing the knowledge that we have, but we also got to know that there's a dashboard. And I want you to think of the dashboard for educators. It's just like your dashboard or your screen saver to your phone. You have many apps and you have and they store different things. They have different functions. And the dashboard to a master educator is going to be their organization. It's going to be their ability to compartmentalize. When I talk about their organization, a successful class is not just you getting up and you teaching and you're seeing the students go, wow, that was amazing. It starts with preparation. And a lot of time prior to the preparation, it starts with what I call boots on the ground. I mean, you got to get in there. If you don't have good organization, personally, it's going to reflect on poor organization professionally. Okay. So we need to mash those two together. A lot of times when there's an example of um, poor organization skills is when you have cluttered desks, cluttered files, you don't know where anything is. And it becomes a direct reflection of, okay, this person needs to probably get their life together, get their mental together, because some things are not meshing. They're not flowing the way that they're supposed to. My goal is to make sure that the educators have a good flow and that you start off with great organization skills, okay? Um, this is one reason I can be very transparent with you. I choose to do a lot of paperless training. Number one, you have technology growing, okay, and a lot of things are electronic. Number two, organizing with a lot of papers and having to keep up with them, you really accumulates fast, okay? And if you're already not a good person to keep up with stuff or to make things look neat and professional, not just thrown in somewhere, it probably would not work for you unless you have an assistant. And most educators don't have an assistant. So they rely on some personal skills to help them organize. But if we look at our general organization and these methods, these duties will change um, as you grow and you start evolving and using more technology, more apps. I have seen these evolve. Copy material, okay. Um, Having a printer and being able to use it, and copying necessary. So I believe in copying necessary material. A lot of unnecessary material, not so. Okay, I feel like it's a waste of paper and a waste of ink. where everybody has drop boxes, so I find a way. Everybody has documents, drives, things of that nature. So I find a way to conserve that. Properly filed material, when you put things in its rightful place. Okay, a student file should be that of a student file. Things that needs to go in there from a teacher aspect and from an admin aspect are two totally different things. Okay, file trade journals. Okay, trade journals to us will also include magazines, videos, things of that nature. All right. Once they have expired, we know we need to let them go. Most of the time, we keep them for years and years and years. Arrange references and resource books. Um, and we keep those just to show the students, what's out there, what's the latest information, things of that nature. But again, there are search engines, Google, Bing, Chrome, things of that nature. Schedule office time. And so, although you may come in and you say, hey, I work a 40-hour shift, but also what I have discovered is you need a teaching time and then you need a planning time. Okay. Teaching time and planning time. That planning time comes before school starts and after school ends. Okay. So put that to the side. Now, is the planning time mandatory for everybody? Planning time is needed for everybody. How much, it will be discretionary. How much will definitely be the big difference. For me, I usually do 30 minutes to an hour before time and then 30 minutes to an hour after. So after class is over with, I still want to come around. I want to debrief. I want to see what worked. I want to have time to file everything, grade papers. I want to have enough time to, if I have to evaluate some students, write my reflections, put them in, talk with my administrators, leadership team, um, and pretty much prepare myself in the classroom for the following day. So that time is very much needed. We can't be just rolling as a rabbit and not take care of the dashboard. And then we create support system among faculty. Who can assist, who can help, who needs help, and these factors as well. So knowing students and organizing information, you create a student profile, create a record of student progress, and document student contacts. Okay. Periodically, we will update the emergency contacts, things of that nature. So when a student's not at school, we do call. If you don't get an answer from the student, you need to call the next person in line. Okay. I do try to touch my students in contact 3 to 4 ways. Some of those ways are non traditional with some schools, but for me, being a small school owner, when I say touch them via contact, that means I may DM them, I may email them, I may call them, I may text them, I may email them. Okay. And so just finding alternative ways to contact them. Um, and I will document my contact efforts. And then even if I contacted them, I need to also document whether they said they were coming to school, the reason they were out, because all of this is support documentation if we have to remove a student. Okay, if we have to evaluate the student and talk about how many times they're tardy, talk about how many times they've missed, how many times we've tried to get in touch with them, all of that information is going to be relevant in the next meeting. Okay, so as an educator, we have to observe this and we have to document. And some people will say document, document, document. Okay. Knowing students and organizing information. It says successful educators will organize files and folders in a system that works best for them, which means you may not do everything that someone else has done, even though someone is training you, that works for them. You can take the information and say, okay, This is the how I learn best. So remember, educators have to know how they learn and observe as well. And you do it as it works best for you. Here's the elements of the environment. You want the environment comfortable and safe. You want it well ventilated and organized. Proper lighting, equipment operated safely, appropriate storage and cleanup, and educators' best work area. Those areas, those environments, that atmosphere needs to be where you're going to be majority of the time. When you're at work, that's your space. Okay. And that space has to be conducive to positive reflections. If the space is dark and gloomy, you're not going to be excited. You're not going to be positive about the work you have to do. You're probably going to feel tired and have a negative aspect on the work that should be produced. You want the equipment to work properly and safety. You don't want any faulty equipment damaging anyone. Okay. And making sure you have the appropriate storage and cleanup, which means daily, before and after and during class subjects. What happens is when we neglect one day, it just turns into another day, another day. And now we have to do these major cleanups, these major office resets because we have lack storage of accumulating more and more stuff, not adequately organizing, and then not properly cleaning. As we consider the environment, we look at student demographics, adult learner characteristics, the physical classroom, the seating arrangements. Now let's look at adult student demographics. You got to know who's in your room. Do you have majority of a student that comes from that actually have went to college? Do you have majority of the student? Do you have a percentage of students who had never graduated high school? Their certificate, they're GED based. I know when we were doing the graduations years ago, I learned that some of my students, a majority of one class, had GEDs and they had never crossed the stage. Nothing wrong with GEDs. So I began to celebrate it. Okay. And that's where our graduation comes from because everybody deserves an opportunity to be celebrated and walk across the stage, you know? And so now those graduations are very essential and it is a part of our heartbeat when it comes to DCI Academy. And adult learner characteristics. A lot of times, you may hear people say you pick your battles and things of that nature. When you're dealing with adults, you have to remember that they are adults. I see many individuals that take power in a title or a form of leadership, but you got to remember adults are adults no matter what your title is. And so, what I like to do is put the choice. I may narrow the choices, but put the choice of what the student needs to do or should be doing in the hands of the learner, in the hands of the adult learner. At that time, they get to tell you what they choose and what's best instead of you picking and choosing for them, because then sometimes they may think that you are telling them what to do, and that happens a lot, that you're bossing them around. And especially be mindful of this if you are a younger educator and your adult learners are 10, 20, 30 years older than you are. It's kind of like you've used the reverse psychology. You're not telling them what to do, but you've narrowed the choices down to A, B, and C. And those are the best choices for you. And you give them the opportunity to choose. Okay. And once they choose, you just continue to move on. The physical classroom and the seating arrangements, you want it manageable, you want it safe. The seating arrangements, if it's the same classroom as their practical area, you want to be able to have them maneuver around without having to fall down. You think about you coming through the door and going straight to your seat. If you got to go through this big maze of seat structure just to get to your seat, you're gonna be like, what is going on? Okay. And remember, every student needs adequate space. So being mindful of that as well, especially when you're trying to fit so many students in a particular area. Let's looking at adult learner characteristics. They need to be goal orientation, past educational experience, and this is what we ask a lot of times on our first day or as we begin to know our learners who they are. What are your goals? Okay, when you get this license, what are you going to do? Past educational experience. How did you get here? What what was in you that said, hey, the next step is going to school? Ingrained habits, those things that they do without even thinking about it. Also finding out if those habits are positive or negative. Established opinions. It is definitely okay for them to have an opinion and you to have an opinion. You can choose to agree or disagree. I want my students to feel like it's a safe space. And also, a part of that safe space means listening to them. And so, what if they think a different way? So, what? Okay. It's not really a big deal. People need to feel heard. And your students are going to look up to you no matter what the age are, and they want to feel heard as well. Relationship to prior knowledge. A lot of times you have individuals who are already working, who's been in beauty for a long time or have studied a long time, even if they have not practiced yet. So they have information, and pretty much they can get to something before you can get to it. So this is why you cannot shun away from technology. You have to run into it. Once you know an area where you need to seek information from, you run into it. And involvement is needed. So I'm big on adult learners participation. Okay. And if you're not going to participate, I said this is probably not going to be the place for you because I'm going to ask you to check in. I'm going to ask you to do the motivation. I'm going to ask you to commentate. I'm going to ask you, are there any questions? Got to have some involvement. Let's look at student demographics. You're looking at age, and that's the first thing we start to do. When we start to look at our groups and who do we have and who do we teaching, and this is part of me saying you got to know your audience. What's the going age, whether the low end or the high end, the gender, ethnic background, and also unique interests. What are those things that interest you that would be surprising to many others? Getting to know students. How do we get to know students? Definitely learning their personal profiles, getting them to brainstorm in groups or teams also, but I ask questions. Okay, I ask, give me a top three, give me a top five. Give me three things about you that no one knows, So we find a way to get to know our audience. Looking at the physical environment, we're looking at the room that you'll be teaching in, the room size. Definitely a small room can't take a whole lot of people. Acoustics, the sound, and also location. Am I in the back? Are we way in the basement? Are we way in the front? The acoustics and location. The lighting. Remember, we need some lighting. The ventilation. We need some air. We need the air circulating. Windows and blinds. I want to see the sunshine. Sunshine. I want to close it. Audio and visual aids. Do you have a projector? Is there a radio in the room? Okay. And then seating. What type of chairs you have? And you have desks. Do you have round tables? Things of that nature. This is the physical environment. So not only are you going to teach, not only are you going to brainstorm how to teach, do the lesson plan, you also have to think about the space that you are doing the teaching in. And you want it comfortable as possible. Here's a look at the motivating classroom, which let's take a screenshot. Varied instructional activities suits the teacher and student needs, equipment and supply shortage, no auditory visual distractions, clear view of learners, accessible materials, and create exciting. So the motivating classroom has all of the aspects and even more. Here's the key: you do not want a lot of distractions. So a lot of times at the when we talk about acoustics and sound, does one class outweigh another class by drowning them out with noise and things of that nature? So you got to be careful and always on point. If that happens, what do you do? How do you shift? Is there another place that you can have your class? Okay, and you want to be accessible to materials that's going to assist you in every lesson. One thing I found that educators don't have what they need to teach, it makes it even harder. So the initial investment for every school owner, for every director, is to make sure the teachers have what they need so they can teach appropriately and continue to satisfy the needs of the students that are within their classrooms. Classroom design. I'm gonna ask that you guys hold on for 1 minute. All right, we've been recording. I did not see that you dropped off, but it has been recording. Please hold for a moment. All right. So as we begin to continue, we look at classroom design. We look at educator presence. You're going to arrive early and greet your students. We call them learners as well. Pre-assigned seating, even if you don't do individual seating, I would like you to consider this factor. As they all come in, you can give them a color like red, green, black, right? Or red, green, blue, or just white versus, or just red versus green. Randomly let them pick. Green sits over here, red sits over here, or this is a green table. This is a red table. This is a black table. You can organize them like that instead of saying you sit there and don't move. Okay. Remember, they are adults. And so, with them being adults, you got to let them definitely feel like they have a choice, even though you're narrowing their decisions, that they have a choice as well. Learning activities scheduled, following the plan, and then also executing the plan. And that's where we get those activities that become successful, or the ones that we're saying, I can't waste time on this one anymore. I'm just going to put it over to the side. I can't use it in this particular class. Motivational posters, you can create your own via Canva, CANVA, or you can purchase them. Um, and they could get very expensive when you purchase them. Okay, so get you some motivation quotes, some affirmations. Find your wall. We have a word wall that we do motivational quotes on, and then you have bulletin boards. Okay, bulletin boards. The bulletin boards help assist. It's a director place of resources. Most of the time, it's in the break room. It may be the front of the class. It holds all the updates, everything that you need. The use of color. Knowing your color theory, color psychology, even though these are few colors, bright yellow, it excites the brain and body. Yes, gets it all excited. Orange agitates the learners. Blue, relaxing, tranquilizing, hormones. And then green is a sense of security, creativity, also honesty. Okay. Also nature. And then you have pale pink like rose, very soothing. And then you have pale yellow almond, non irritating. So you have colors that have a psychology background. Okay, based on how well you want your class to feel, you can use those colors in the classroom. Okay, blacks is lux and luxury. Um, Purple, we talk about that being royalty. Gold, such as also royalty, luxury. Seating arrangements, you have the U table seating or circular. Okay. These are by far my favorites. All right. Um, Having seats all over the place, and really as a new instructor, you wouldn't think that of the way that my class is set up has an influence on how they learn. It absolutely, you want a round view. Remember, you are the leader in the classroom. So if you're going to have the U shape, you need to be at the center or at the front of the classroom. However you set it up, you need to be the center. All right. Everybody needs to know who's the teacher. And I think I've said this before. I don't want to walk in a classroom and see the teacher and the student looking alike. So this is why we have instructors that have different color robe, different color t-shirts, scrubs, things of that nature. It just sets them apart. Now, boardroom style is great for lecture and presentation. In semicircle, you can work the room, work the front, and work the middle. Seating arrangements for classroom or shift run classroom are going to be very traditional. Many people have pulled away from seating arrangements just because, just trying to stay outside of the box. And then I don't want my adult learners to feel like it's elementary or middle school and saying, this your seat. Don't get up, this your seat. Okay. A chevron style is more diagonal, gives a good flow, but also the same thing if you're going to be assigned seats. Just be very mindful of the audience that you carry. Seating arrangements, you can, of course, do theater. I love a good theater, but amphitheater works great for me because I'm tall and everybody gets to see equally the presentation. Seating arrangements, more space at the round tables and less chairs is always ideal for me. So they call it a half round. Look at the practical classrooms, special needs accessibility. The special needs accessibility would be wheelchair. Um, Someone may have to pull up a chair as they work. That's a special need. Or somebody may have to have a certain type of lighting, certain type of tool. Really depends on what's going on with them. Um, you can't first say ask people like what's their issues are. You want them to be able to come to you. So make sure you have that they're shared that there's a space of discretion when they can come to you. Lab stations. Most of the time they're just general slabs with a mirror, things of that nature. But you got lab stations, you got equipment, making sure equipment is clean at all times. You have supplies, making sure you're stocked on all of your supplies and you're not purchasing something you're not going to be using, and then policies and procedures. Always reflecting on those and going back to some of our rules and regulations. And it just keeps it refreshed and everybody knows what's expected. And learning facilities checklist, which means the same list that you would use that I use what state board goes by for school checklist. And so if we're using it often, we can definitely go back in and say, you know what, I need to make sure I make these corrections. This has been an issue for a long time for a lot of people, is making sure the facilities are up to par. And doing personal audits helps so much as well. Teaching materials, you got to make sure they're relevant. So come with some new stuff, okay? Student level, you got to go above where they are because they are researching and have all kind of time on their hands. Timelessness, okay? Teaching something that never goes out of style. Finger waves are not going anywhere. They're going to get more and more classic, okay? Author and publisher credibility. The references you're bringing, you've done the homework. It's a real author. It's it's a real job. Okay, organization and layout. You can blueprint it out all you want. You can draw it out. But when you walk into that classroom, you're gonna set the standard for that classroom. So make sure if you see anything cluttery, something that catches your eye not supposed to, that you take care of it because it's gonna touch the students even more. And then textbook evaluation checklist, making sure you use the most relevant information possible, and also making sure that the information textbooks you're using are also those that reference the exam. And sometimes I check and see who has their books or who has their study guides or who has their journals just to see who's really doing putting in the work. Teaching materials, um, everything that you, and the best way for me to describe this, everything you need to get your point across while you teach. Everything you need to get your point across. So you think about what you got to teach. And you think about what would make this so much fun and really get students to learning. Administrative responsibilities. If you don't have an admin, but if you did have an admin, these would be some of the duties. Accurate records, attendance, grade. You record the grades, lesson plans, academic advising, student surveys, advisory council meetings, a lot of scheduling, facility reports. How are we doing against our own selves, and then continuing education? How do we build it? Who's providing it? Is the school going to pay for it? Things of that nature. Okay, we want to be welcoming to all students. So, yes, we're going to be standing and we're going to be present either at the door or when they come into the room, welcoming to all students. And you can say, hey, welcome, glad to see you. Thanks for joining our family. Since the first day of class, sets the stage and mood for the remainder of the school course. Okay, it's going to set up no matter what happened on the first day, it's going to set in their minds, okay, until you blow it the next day and the next day and the next day. It says the sound orientation program is one of the best ways to prevent future student withdrawals, which means put it all on the table. We look at orientation, have time to work it, okay? And then there's always a way to say something without pretty much saying it. You don't want to be rude to anybody, you want to be remain kind, but you do want to have a really serious conversation. It says on the first day of school, set the tone, establish rapport, review the standards, establish expectations, introduce the course, clarify the goals, and answer questions and teach. That's a lot on the first day. And we did this yesterday. I was exhausted after getting through telling them about everything, all kind of clock ins and things of that nature. So it was refreshing to see them with two ponytails. Um, when I was gonna do a reference where a student came in with two ponytails, and I said, "Oh, that's nice. I really like your hairstyle. It just kind of perked me up a little bit, brought the old school back." And she was like, "Oh, I'm glad you like it. I didn't know if I could wear it or not." And that built a conversation. And so from her first day, we kind of had a rapport of, well, my teacher's cool. She complimented my ponytails and things of that nature. So we've had to build an relationship that was very easy. And even yesterday, having new students come in and going through orientation, I talked to one of them. She was like, "Oh, I feel like family. Mission accomplished." That's exactly what I wanted. You want them to feel like a team, feel like family. Don't want them to feel like it was made up. As we begin to wrap up chapter two, I just want to make a note. We are going into chapter three next week. Um, Preparation and organization is required prior to the start of class, and so we should not be starting class and then trying to get it together. All right, so that's why we have that planning period before and after class to make sure we execute everything. This is the dashboard. Okay, it said educators must maintain current knowledge relative to the field of study, which means remain teachable. Work habits must be developed to ensure that administrative tasks are current and timely. Classroom must be safe and motivating. So all that good and amazing stuff. Okay, in retrospect, let's list the benefits and results of effective organization and teacher preparation. So in your own times, what are some of the benefits? Think about it, of being prepared. Your class is going to run smoothly as possible. You always say anything could happen, but you're not going to be stressed. The students not going to be stressed as well. They're not going to feel. Remember, you set the tone. They're not going to feel something opposite of what you said. And just preparation is everything. As an educator, director, school owner, I don't encourage you to take it to the limit every day. Take it as far as you can take it and take a break. Okay? Take it as far as you can take it and take a break. All right, we look at the retrospect. List of characteristics that are common among adult learners. In the early part of the presentation, there were several. Make sure you go back and you reference those. And also, what are the ultimate goals of classroom management and organization? List several administrative tasks required as an educator. Okay, so as an educator, what are you responsible for? And there you go, guys. You just completed chapter two. We'll move into chapter three next week. But guess what? Chapter two is in the books. I'm definitely going to send you references to each one of them, um, each one of our presentations that we're going to do. But at the end of the day, I want you to study chapter two. I also want you to study any study materials that came within the email related to chapter two. On next week, we'll do a light recap, light quiz, maybe about 10 questions, just to see where we are. And then we'll move into chapter three and four, which three is not going to be that long. We really want to have a major emphasis on four. So next week, we got double duty. All right. Y'all have a blessed and amazing day. And remember, this class was live streamed via our YouTube DCI education group. Take a moment and go back through chapter two in preparation for your final exam, state licensure for Tennessee Master Educator. You have a blessed and amazing day. Good night.